Hello students, let me introduce you to a new chapter called as Reproduction in Plants. In this module, I'll be talking about Introduction to Reproduction, and I'll also be throwing light on the reproduction in lower organisms. So look, listen and learn. Now, look at this beautiful plant. What do you think it is? Let us call it a mature mango plant. Now you know if this is a mango plant, it is going to definitely produce these big juicy mangoes. Is that okay? Yes, there you go. You can see a mature mango plant is producing big, thick, juicy mangoes. And when one such mango will fall on the ground, right, the seed is going to definitely give rise to a new but young mango plant. Is that okay? So what you just saw was a mature mango plant give rise to a young mango plant. And this is what is called as reproduction. So if I have to define the term, I can say that the ability of living beings to give rise to young ones of their own kind is called as reproduction. Is that okay? Now, why do you think reproduction is important? You must know that reproduction is very, very essential for the perpetuation and continuation of species in nature. Because if for no reproduction, you should know that the species can become extinct, right? Now let us see what are the main ways through which organisms reproduce. Now if you look at the modes of reproduction, you must know there are two basic ways how any organism can reproduce. Is that okay? The first method is called as asexual method of reproduction, and the second method is called as sexual mode of reproduction. Is that okay? Asexual method has one more name. You can also call it as apo, which means without, and mixes, which means mixing, right? And this actually means apomixis, which means there is no mixing of gametes. Similarly, sexual reproduction can also be given another term. We can call it amphi, which means both, and mixis, meaning mixing. So you can say that amphimixis means which involves fusion of the genetic material of male as well as the female gamete. Is that okay? So I can say that asexual mode of reproduction can also be called as apomixis, whereas sexual mode of reproduction can be also called as amphimixis. Now in angiosperms, you must know that asexual method of reproduction basically involves vegetative propagation, which can be done with the help of either root, stems or leaves. Whereas sexual reproduction involves production of a flower. You know from last year that flower is the reproductive organ of an angiosperm. Is that okay? Right. Moving on. Let us first see or consider lower organisms. Remember, in lower organisms, asexual reproduction is more common method compared to sexual reproduction. And there are different methods of asexual reproduction in lower organisms. And these involve either binary fission, next budding, third sporulation, and finally fragmentation. So they can use any one of this method to reproduce asexually. Let us throw light on all of these methods one by one. Let us see what is binary fission. Remember, binary fission takes place exclusively in unicellular organisms. Is it okay? Now the name says it. It is a method by which one parent cell will divide to give you two equal cells. Something like this here. Okay? You can see these two equal cells. They have been formed basically by division of a single parent cell. And what will happen? These two cells will then give rise to two new individuals. Is that okay? So every time one cell is giving you two cells, and that's why the name is called as binary fission. Is it okay? Now remember, a classic example of binary fission would be our very own prokaryotic organism called as bacteria. Is that okay? Bacteria classically reproduce by binary fission. An example of organism that can also reproduce by binary fission, but this time an eukaryotic organism, would be amoeba. What you see behind me are two amoebae that has been formed as a result of binary fission of one parent amoeba. Is that okay? Moving on, let us see what is budding. Okay, just look at this slide here. What you see is one cell producing a bud, and then the bud is getting separated. In budding, remember the division is unequal. The two cells are not equal size. Is it okay? And if you look at the center picture here, you will notice that the bud which is formed initially remains attached to the parent cell. And if you see the last picture, later on this bud can detach from the parent cell and continue its life as a new mature individual. Is it okay? A classic example of an organism that reproduces by budding would be yeast. You guessed it right. What you see behind me is this large cell which is the parent cell of the yeast, and what it has produced is a small bud. Initially it is attached to the parent, later on it will separate from the parent and have its own identity. And this process is called as budding. Okay? So in this module, I have discussed introduction to reproduction, and I've also thrown light on two methods of reproduction in lower organisms, namely binary fission and budding. In the next module, I will continue with reproduction in lower organisms, and I'm going to throw light on the two new processes called as sporulation as well as fragmentation. Thank you and take care.